I'm very determined to do the things that I believe in. And at the end of the day, I would say my biggest asset is to understand that it's all about a story, that we're all storytellers. And this is something I believe that younger people in university have to believe and learn the art of storytelling. And it's all about what you are trying to say. Because if you have a story, and it's a damn good story, you will be able to sell it.
Good morning, Rebecca. It's so great to meet you here on Zoom.
Hello, Petra. It's lovely to meet you also. I'm very happy to be here with you.
I saw your wonderful paintings, and I've seen also that you were a fashion designer, or if you're still doing fashion design.
Well, I think that when you're a fashion designer, I was a fashion designer since I was 18. So I think that it's just part of my tissue, it's part of my fiber. I think my passion for fashion started as a very young girl. I grew up with watching the old movies of Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
And that's such an inspiration. Looking at all the old Edith Heads and Adrians and all the great designers of Hollywood that really created magic and glamour. And that inspired me. I studied fashion very, very young. I skipped a year in high school, went to study, and I studied at the Fashion Institute of Technology here in New York.
But can I just interrupt you there? As a child, did you sew, or did you try and create these things?
I painted.
Oh, you painted. Okay.
Yeah. I was not a sewer. I went to university to learn all the technical aspect, but
really?
As a child, no, I would paint, I would draw, and very, very naively, actually, because I taught myself. So it wasn't like I really learned as a child. So my illustrations as a young girl were very, very exaggerated, but they said a lot,
Oh, yeah. So it's natural. It came natural to you then.
Yeah, it was something I wanted so badly. I just wanted to design and create. I think that when you have a passion, when you're so young, how can I say, it drives you. The passion drives you. And in my case, it kept me alive, my passion. Yeah.
And your parents, were they supportive, and the school and the teachers?
My parents were amazingly supportive, always. They basically said, whatever you want to do, you could do it, So thank God I didn't have to go into like a family business or be, have that guilt and responsibility to say, no, this is what we want you to do. This is what you have to do. They gave my sister and I all the freedom to choose our paths. And I think that's a very, very big gift that I had, because I think a lot of young people, sometimes they do get influenced heavily by a family responsibility or a path that the families think that maybe this is what you should do.
Yeah. And also, were your parents artistic?
No, my father was in construction. He was a problem solver. My mother was an administrator assistant. So she worked for heads of companies. Eventually, she worked for me,
Oh,
with
really?
me.
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess I should say with
Amazing.
me. Yes. She's quite a lady. And I thank God I still have her with me. And she's a remarkable woman. She very modern woman and, very in tune to what's going on in the world.
So did you studied fashion in New York then?
I studied in New York. I went to FIT when I was 16 because I skipped a year in high school, and I studied there for 2 years. In those days, the program was a 2-year program. The year I graduated, they went into a 4-year program.
Okay.
So, but I was so anxious to work. I'm a worker. I am, you give me a mission and a job and I will attack it. And all I wanted to do was work. I wanted to work. I would have done anything for any job. I mean, pick up needles, whatever, whatever I could have done, I would have done. So I graduated when I was 18 and I got hired for an American company that had the license for Pierre Cardin. So it was quite fascinating, actually. And I went to Paris.
Oh, wow.
They sent me for the couture. I met Monsieur Cardin, who was a fascinating man, lovely man. And I saw the couture week, and it was, I thought I died and went to heaven.
Really?
And it was such a great opportunity to understand and learn who Cardin was and the brand. Because, for a while, Cardin had become just a licensing machine. But to have the privilege of meeting him and seeing couture and understanding the genius of his creations was really a privilege for me.
Well, yeah, you talk about this being a privilege, but I'm thinking now also that how many people would want this great opportunity, but you were just willing to do anything to do it.
Yes. And then I stayed with this company for 3 years, and then I got crazy and went out on my own. And I said, I asked the man who owned the company, I said, I love creating coats and suits, but, I love creating separates and individual pieces. And he said, no, Rebecca, that's not what we do. And I said, okay, I understand. And I just was crazy. And I just went out and, started a small brand. And it was the same time that Michael Kors, who's a dear friend, he had just started his brand in those days. And, there were just a few young designers who were trying to emerge. And in those days, it wasn't so easy for young designers. It was all about the bigger brands. So it was a challenging time. And for the next 10 years, I, struggled and, did everything I could to try to keep the brand alive with very poor funding, because the funding, even in those days, was immense. It was immense.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. But how brave to step out, and do your own thing. Because,
it's New York.
I'm listening. I'm just thinking New York already is such a big place with so much competition.
Yes.
But
in those days,
young.
The market was so different. When I say the market, the American design industry was not as massive as it is now. It was big, but it was different. It was a much more exciting in a sense of business opportunities. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have, all of the modern forms of technology, which in a way was, I don't want to sound, because now I'm going to sound old if I say this. It was actually quite incredible. Fashion had, time to live, to exist. Today it's on the runway, and simultaneously it's all over the world, and the world can do with it what it chooses. So, in those days, you had to wait for the reviews to come out. You had to wait till the collections actually arrived in the store. The copying of brands was not as fast as it is now. The trends could last more than an hour. Now everything is just, on speed. And I mean, I think there's good things about technology, but in those days, I think it kept our industry much more fascinating.
And do you think also, because it's so almost in our faces, that the styles sometimes loses its the glamour of it, but just want to draw attention, that people design now to draw attention because it's this huge amount of designs and visuals, and that how do you get your name out there?
Well, I think that there's the things that trouble me about today's landscape is that it's so about shock and about celebrityism. I think celebrityism is more important than the actual craft. And that saddens me, because I think that there's not as much respect for the actual concept, philosophy, the craft of creating and designing fashion. And that to me is very sad, because I think it's so much about who wore it rather than its own value.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think also the rush, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, designers have become, it's like being on a running machine constantly. And no creative mind can work at that speed. And then I always question myself, like, do we really need all of these collections? Do we need all of this product? Is there really the consumption for all of this product? And I think in my personal opinion, I don't believe there is. I think that our industry, has become a numbers game in such a degree that we're shooting ourselves in our own foot, because, how many collections do you need to create? I mean, do you really need a fresh collection in the store every month or every 4 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever? I mean, there seems to be something just too much. It's overkill, and designers cannot compete on those timeframes. And that's why so many houses burn out. That's why there's so many that don't have, I mean, first of all, the cost of it is incredible. And, so for, let's say, big houses that are supported by big groups, they have the finance to finance all those collections. But the question is, can we really sell all of that product constantly like that? I don't believe so.
And now for young designers, do you think they also they don't understand the time frame, and I wonder sometimes when I speak to artists as well, like say musicians, that people don't understand the whole path, or the whole route that you have to take to become the designer or to have your brand out there, that they want everything to happen instantly.
Well, yeah, I think it's because the game of fame and celebrityism has taken over. There was a time people had to learn a craft. Going to school was not even a scratch on the surface. I mean, I think about how I learned in Italy for 20 years craft. I mean, yes, I was in New York for 10 years and then another 20 years in Italy. And for me, working in factories and ateliers and artisan workshops to learn what went into making a garment, the people that made those garments. I mean, that was a continued education. It wasn't about, oh, this is going to be on the cover of Vogue, or this is going to be worn by Beyonce, or, it was for me really understanding that a concept that I had in my head could actually be developed if I worked really hard to figure out the challenges. And I don't think designers work like this today. I'm not saying it as a disrespect.
Yeah.
I don't think they have the time to think like this. I don't think they have they don't even have the time to really think, because they're running and running and running. And they have so much pressure, whether it's their own business or working for a very large brand. And today, the only brands that are surviving are large brands. And the pressures are enormous. And they're dictated. And I don't think, unless you want to be a very small, self-owned atelier, do you really have the time and ability to create what is in your head? I mean, I think you're just, too many people are burning out. I see it all over the world. People just burning out. They just can't keep up. The turnover of designers in houses is just immense. They're there for 2 years, 3 years if they're really good. 5 years, it's a miracle. Because the brand wants newness, they want freshness, they want newness, they want freshness. It's like the creative process has become like bread, and that's sad. I find that, you really need, I think that there's a lot of things that need to change, but, I decided not to wait for that miraculous time when people recognize certain things that we will all do, keep sending goods into stores, fashion, then goes on sale, and then it goes markdowns, and it just dies a slow death, and I think that, it's sad. And I chose to change paths at a certain point because I knew that if I sold my brand, I would not have the same DNA in my brand. It would be owned by someone else who didn't recognize the DNA, because it's very rare that owners, when they bring large amounts of money, they think that they know better, and maybe they do. I'm not putting that down, because money and business and design and creativity have to work together. And I think that most of the time, brands lose the DNA, and they just become some other variation of a theme. And I had worked so hard to build my own brand in Europe that when I realized that it couldn't, if I sold the majority of the brand, it would not be the same. I just knew it. I mean, you see, everyone from a Jill Sanders to anybody, when they sold their brands, yes, they stayed on 2 years and then they left, because it's just a different world. And my life,
it loses the personality of the brand.
It loses. I think that, and I would have to say that I was a very cooperative person in listening to other perspectives. And I think that creativity doesn't lie just on designers. It relies also on business people. Business people need to be creative. They have to figure out, how do I sustain the genetic DNA of a brand without compromising and destroying everything that it was built on? And I think that that's not just a one-person decision. I think it's, you have to, if someone's willing to invest in a great deal of funding into a brand, then I believe that they believe in it. But what is the ultimate vision? Okay, maybe for them it's making money. Okay, I think it is. Okay. So, but you have to have long-term vision. And that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that sometimes you have to go back a bit before you can go forward. So you need very patient partners that are willing to say, let's stay on this track. And while we're doing this, let's think about this. And you have to surf. The days of 5-year plans died a long time ago. The day of 3-year plans died even longer. It's like today you can barely have a 1-year plan because the world changes so fast. Events affect our business. Everything affects our business. So, to say that in a year we're going to have this, and that, it's challenging. It's challenging for everyone involved. I'm not dishing the business side, because without the business side, you don't have the creative side, and without the creative side, you don't have the business side.
But this is something where I see also in theaters, for example, where you have the creative side in the theater and then you have the business side. But if the businesses don't understand the theater or the art, then there's always a discord there, and there's always and then it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's true, because it all comes down to money.
Yeah.
And art, for the same matter. Everything comes down to money. It's about return. It's about a return on investment. Broadway shows open, close the next day. Just think about all the money, the time, the development, everything. Think of the lives it affects, okay? Close down the next day. So I think that what young people, and I always say, listen, I was impatient too as a young girl. The Rebecca who was, 18 was terribly impatient. And I think I was impatient because I wanted to have the ability to do what I loved. It wasn't for fame. That was the difference for me. It wasn't about fame. It was about being able to do what I loved. And that's a very different mindset. And I think today's generation sees things a lot differently. I'm not saying that all do. There are plenty of smart young people out there who say, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to start it online. I'm going to go slowly. I'm not going to get involved in any big groups. I understand that. I don't like to speak in generalizations, because I do think that there are a lot of bright young people that see beyond the fluff.
But I also think during lockdown, I did a series of interviews also with artists, and we talked about the fact, why art is not valued, and artists are not valued, and I have come to the conclusion that it happens because in the schools and in our education system, art is really seen as a side subject, and the focus is much more on the sciences and maths. And if you actually look at it, all these subjects are interlinked in a way, so that we should really be teaching art alongside all these subjects. And I wonder that now that what you are saying also, that if people, because I believe that you can only appreciate something once you know about it. So if and in fashion is, it's art, it is a form of art, but we don't see it that way anymore. We see it as just a business,
Well,
and I wonder if people would look at fashion differently if they see it also as a form of art.
Well, it's also more than that. For me, there's something else. It's also a sociological reflection of our world. And I think that's also an aspect of education that needs to be spoken about, because I think that, when what we wear, how we communicate who we are is a reflection of the times that we live, as is art. So I think that the creative worlds shouldn't be judged in a superficial way, but in a much more profound way. I mean, that's my feeling. I think that art has many of the same problems that fashion has. It also has a lot to do with the flavor of the month, sound bites, so and so is fabulous. Oh, so and so is fabulous. So and so is fabulous. So and so, so it goes on Twitter, it goes on here, it goes on all of this. And everyone says, oh my God, this is great. And where did it start? From one person who maybe had the creative clout to say, this is good. This is accepted. But I don't think that, I was watching this morning, Jerry Saltz, who's the art critic at New York Magazine, and he was saying that, the pyramid of art, where you have like the ones who can get the millions of dollars for their pieces, and then all the struggling artists that are on the bottom who really have difficulty getting a show and putting their voice out or being known or being seen, getting the value. They have to be looked for. And as a world of art critics and whatever we want to call them, art influencers, or what, the word influencer is like my least favorite word in the universe. But I just think that all of these people have to get out and see everything. They can't just look at the ones on the top and a few opening shows of new people. Because I think that and this is what Jerry Saltz was even saying, he says, there's so much to be seen here. Mm-hmm. And you've really got to work it and walk and see, Mm-hmm. And I agree with him. And I agree that even with fashion, there's so many great fashion designers who are up in Harlem that are, down in the Lower East Side, who really are working 24/7, 365. They don't have staff. They don't have everything. And they have a vision and they have a point of view, but they don't have the funding to get that all done. And funding isn't a matter of just producing. It's also about elevating the vision, having the best materials, having the best craftsmanship, having, the ability, to do it. And then you still are faced with a retail world that's very weak.
Yeah. Yeah. But tell me, Rebecca, now, how did your transition then happen into the art world from the fashion, from fashion design to art?
So, I had my husband, Giacomo, he sadly got sick into a very bad cancer, and he died quite quickly, 6 months. And he was only 53. And I was really, really a great loss. My children were quite young. They were 9 and 12. And I really didn't know what I would do without him being in my life and how I would manage raising my kids alone. And we lived in a very small village in Italy. And I felt I didn't really know what to do, honestly, to be very frank. I mean, I loved my life in Italy. I loved it. I loved creating. I loved the people. I loved the culture. I loved everything. And then you get a bomb, the person you love passes right before you. And I had just finished writing a book and illustrating a book called A Life of Style. It was published by Monacelli Press, Random House, in 2010, the year that Giacomo passed away. And I remember speaking with Franca Sozzani, the late editor-in-chief of Italian Vogue. And Franca was a remarkable woman. Besides her creative vision, her brilliance, she was a really smart woman, a real woman's woman. And I said, Franca, I don't know what to do right now. I feel like lost. And she said, no. She said, I think you should go to New York and concentrate on your art. You're an artist. You've always been an artist. You have so much to say. Your children, I think, would be great because she's a mother. She was a mother. She understood. She said, take the kids to New York and give them a fresh start. If I was home in Italy, everyone was, oh, poverini, the poor little boys. And they would always look and say, oh, so sad. I didn't want that sadness.
Yeah.
I wanted to honor their father all the time, but I didn't want it to be sad. I wanted it to be happy and glorious, So she said, you go to Italy, go to New York, and you can collaborate with us at the magazine, because she was in that time just setting up the Italian Vogue.com, which was, if you think about timing, it's crazy. That was 2010. And she said, and you'll have still consulting work here, because I also had to figure out financially, how would I support myself, So I did that. And I got an agent a short while after I got there for illustration. And then I got a gallerist who saw my work, Ralph Pucci. And he started showing my work. And one thing led to another. It wasn't easy, because coming as a fashion person to the art side, there's a lot of snobbery.
Really?
Yes, there's a snobbery. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard enough for someone to call you an artist, but being a fashion person, you at least then, and still, there's some snobbery.
Oh, okay.
Although the other way, it works easier.
Oh, is it?
Everybody today becomes a fashion designer. It's like anybody can become a fashion designer today. You have a great major song and they say, I want to do my own fashion. Oh, how brilliant. Everybody can become a fashion designer. But segueing the other ways is more challenging. It's more challenging. And at the same time, I just, I'm very determined to do the things that I believe in. And at the end of the day, I would say my biggest asset is to understand that it's all about a story, that we're all storytellers. And this is something I believe that younger people in university have to believe and learn, the art of storytelling. And it's all about what you are trying to say. Because if you have a story, and it's a damn good story, you will be able to sell it. And when I say sell it, meaning have somebody like the story.
Yeah.
So I always say, okay, I'm a painter, but what am I painting? What is my voice? What is my point? Just as if I went to a collection, I would say, okay, there's thousands of clothes out there, millions of pieces of clothing. What am I going to say here that's not out there? We call that the white space that no one's touched, that little hole of opportunity that would give somebody a reason to believe in you. And that to me is what I like to do. And that I think that's what my sense of survival is. It's understanding that if you want to do something new, figure out what the white space is. What is your voice? What is your voice going to fill so it can be heard out there? And I think if you can get to that, you will survive and succeed. It may not be on a path or time frame that you like, but you will succeed if you stick to it. But you got to stick to it. And you have to also stick to it and be able to evolve it. go a little to the right, come back to the left, maybe 3 more degrees, go a little here. It's the journey, and I always say I think of my life in chapters, and, if you think of your life without a deadline, you'll be much better. It's like, I have to do this at this age. I have to do this at that age. Don't think of it in that way. Mm-hmm. You may reach what you consider success, not when you're expecting it. And then the question is, what is success?
Exactly. Yeah. But you had the confidence also when you were young. You had the confidence to go out there and do it, and do in the fashion industry. And now you have that same confidence where you are now painting.
I think it's more than confidence. I think it's passion. It's a passion because, believe me, I have days where I'm like petrified.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course I am. I mean, this, and also the more successful you become, the more intimidated you become. How do you stay at the level that you're at, that you don't go backwards, So I think it's more about passion than confidence, because I had a lot of challenges thrown at me. I could write a book on the challenges, but my passion outweighed the challenges. It wasn't the confidence, it was the passion, that burning fire that you have to keep alive in you.
Now tell me about your paintings, because you paint women, and what is it's you are empowering women in a way.
Yes. Women I've always dressed women. I've always had very important women in my life as role models. I think that women are fascinating as human beings. Not that men aren't. I just think that women have the ability to do so many things simultaneously. There's a survival instinct in women that is beyond commendable. And yet, at the same time, I don't think women are empowered enough to own always their own uniqueness of being. And I say that in every term, meaning we all have such insecurities, whether it's physical, psychological, but we don't really have time to concentrate on it because we usually have too much to do. Okay.
That's true.
But down deep inside us, we worry how we look, the way we act, the way we come across, whether it's through our ethnicities, our uniqueness of being, like, oh, she has such a big nose, or she's not skinny, or she's too skinny, or she's, strange looking. And I just can't believe why we can't own who we are. And I think that my mission is to celebrate women and their uniqueness of being, and to hopefully have them embrace their own uniqueness of being. To me, there's no standard of beauty. You can't say, oh, she's beautiful or she's not beautiful, according to who? Oh, she's got a funny look or funny this, or it's like, who determines that?
Exactly.
I mean, beauty is, I was at a dinner one night recently, and someone said, do you think she's pretty? And I said, I think she's captivating, because the word pretty just sounds so.
Yeah.
And I said,
shallow.
It depends it sounds so like,
Yeah.
I said, she has such an incredible personality. And she's so in light, she's like this. And they said, but she's not really pretty. I said, well, what is pretty, And I said, I think she's very pretty. I think she's beautiful. I think she's fabulous, And, she wasn't bone thin, this girl. And she didn't meet certain, like, standards, I guess, to this person that they thought was pretty, And I just said, that's so sad that they can't see the beauty in her, And so when I started painting, I just really started celebrating women's expression, and it can be from a daze to a rolled eye to a, it can be so many different things. Her overall style, the way she says who she is, her quirkism, maybe that an eye drops down on one side a little bit, which I think is more fascinating, or that, just her long neck or her short neck or her whatever, I like to look at women and say, I'm going to celebrate them. And, portraiture is something that was always really for the upper class, royalty. And one of my very favorite shows I did was called White Shirts. And it was about, the concept was taking women, like all kinds of ladies, putting them in white shirts, give it a very traditional approach, but show them like in modern terms as like people that you would never expect to see in a formal portrait. So maybe it was a girl with a tattoo on her neck, and maybe she had 10 earrings up her ear, that she was in a white shirt and she was posed. And then the question is, what does that girl do? Well, is she royal? Is she a secretary? Is she a designer? Is she an author? Does she work in a grocery store? Can you figure that out by just looking at her? So it was a play on like, okay, so who do you think this girl is? And it's really up to the viewer to say who they think. It's not for me to tell you who she is. I painted it, it's enough. But let yourself imagine, like who they are. And my next show is coming up. Then I have a show out in LA right now, which is a different kind of show. It's a show honoring the mothers of jazz. And the reason I did that was because jazz music was a music that I grew up to, and I loved listening to Billie Holiday and Nina Simone and all those women that really made a difference in my life. But I wanted to paint them not for the music that they created, but for their journeys. And I felt that their journeys were all so unique. I mean, all of the women that I painted all had to deal with racism. Okay. But their stories were deeper than just racism. And the stories were so fascinated. So that I chose 8 women, and it was very hard to narrow it down because there were so many amazing women. And I made them super large. They were 6 feet by 4 feet. And they, it's really just like shoulder up, huge head. And I went a little 3-dimensional on it. I crafted paper and things off of it. So part of their body was coming off of the canvas. And in a way, I just wanted to show them as larger than life. And the show is called Voices. It is called Voices. And it's a show that I was very proud of. Ralph Pucci, who's my gallerist, is a major jazz philanthropist. He helps support an incredible school called the Christian McBride Jazz House Kids that Christian and his wife founded to help inspire kids from the intercity, but also women who really are not, have not traditionally been accepted in the jazz world, except as singers. So, Ralph and I both have a passion for jazz, and I said, usually I don't always do realistic, although this year I did do my first royal portrait. I painted the Queen of Jordan and her daughters and her new daughter-in-law.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was very exciting. So usually, my work vacillates between reality and creative portraiture.
But how amazing that you also with this project where you highlight the jazz, the women in jazz, that you now also make people look differently, at them or feel them in a way, sense them in a way.
Well, I always say to people when I'm always nervous about commissions on portraits because, people see themselves a certain way. And I say to them before I accept a commission, I always say, this is me seeing you.
Yeah.
Which is a very important clarity that you have to establish. I mean, I'm not painting every eyelash that's on your eye. It's not about your eyelash. It's about the energy. And what I see in you. So for me, it's really something very personal from my vision of you. So, and as long as they can accept that, then I'll accept the commission. Because I don't want someone to say, oh, I don't think I look like that,
Well, I actually get that in photography. And, photography it's
a moment.
Yeah. But then you find people who can't accept themselves, even in a photograph, So I can imagine that it's when you are doing
it's very challenging.
It's very challenging. Yeah.
And it's very challenging to paint people That's even.
Yeah. I can imagine. Yeah. I can imagine that. But so you are just so this is what you do. You focus on women and you highlight personality in women.
Yeah, I like to celebrate them. It's a celebration. My next show is a very different show for me. That will be in May in New York. And, some people may be surprised by it, but it's very me, but it's a very new view,
But so do you challenge yourself every time when you do a new exhibition?
Always.
Okay.
Always. For me, it's the challenge for myself, not for the viewer. It's the challenge that am I doing the best I can do? Am I not exploring something that, I don't want to get stuck somewhere.
Yeah.
Because life is in motion and my work should be in motion. So that's what I try to do. I try to grow every day. I paint every day. I draw every day. I do something that can, I always say that, if you allow too much time to go between work, you start freezing up. If it's in motion, it keeps moving. So I always say to people, don't let a day go by where you're not expressing yourself. I'm not saying that I pick up my paintbrushes every day, but I try to create. I try to write. I try to draw. I try to think, put thoughts down on paper. I mean, creativity doesn't come, I have tons of projects that I just create and I don't do anything with them yet, because I know the time's not right.
But when you start a project, or when you have an idea of something, how much does it evolve? Is it always seeing something and then when it's the final product, or when it's final painting, it's exactly how you saw it? Or is there in the time that you do it, an evolution?
I think that there's an evolution as you start, and then it's like you get fully immersed, and then you get complete ownership. That's me, like I may start something and say, maybe this is going somewhere else. Okay. And I try to allow myself the liberty in doing it like that. So I think that, you don't want to put too many barricades around you, but you want to keep a focus and keep thinking, well, is this where I'm going with this? Or maybe I should go a little bit more here or there. And that's how I work, And this year, I'm also, for the first time, I'm introducing I've developed prints also. Oh, so I've taken my art and manipulated them into prints, and I'm doing a collection of wall coverings with my art, which is very interesting. Yeah. And that will launch in September of 24 with a company called Momentum, which is a company that really gears to hospitality environments for, offices and
amazing.
But this is really geared to hospitality, which I'm very excited.
Yeah. But was it your? Do you come up with these ideas? Do you think, and then you?
I'll tell you how this happened. It was a really funny thing. During COVID, I had done a body of work which really, really grew me. I mean, it was a frightening time, as it was for all people. And I decided to reach out to women around the world on Instagram and ask them if they would like to share their stories with me. And if they shared their stories, like in a written paragraph, I would do a portrait of them. And I figured we could document what we were going through, because there was no work. I mean, there was no work there. I was like, okay, let me try to save myself. And I think maybe this could be interesting to do. It was a pure emotional need for outreach. Okay. And women started writing, and they wrote from all over the world, and they shared the most remarkable stories. And as each woman shared a story, she wrote back to the other woman before her, and vice versa. And before you knew it, it became a sisterhood. And we call it the Stay Home Sisterhood. And at the end, I did 440 portraits of women from 6 continents. Mm-hmm. And 49 of those women were nurses who were really suffering during that time. And I learned something so important during this process, that women, after I did a portrait, and I really hadn't done a lot of realistic portrait before this. And I thought, well, maybe they won't like their portraits. But every woman was so moved. Really? She would say, Rebecca, you've given me dignity. I feel like someone's seen me. And I thought, oh my God, this is a remarkable thing for me to understand, that having a portrait showed this woman that she had value, that she had, that someone actually concentrated on her. Mm-hmm. In a time when she felt so abandoned and so alone. And I don't care who these women were as diversified as, from CEOs to students, to kids, to women that, were alone raising disabled children. And you name it, I've got the story for you. It's remarkable. And I thought, my God, you know, if portraiture can do something like that,
Yeah.
then I've understood a lot about painting, that women really need that, you know? Anyway.
Oh, I can absolutely imagine that. Yeah, that it's special because it's not just that you saw them, but it's also that you took the time.
And their story of influenced how I painted them, you know. I mean, the stories are remarkable. I hope one day to be able to do a museum show with those pieces. Everybody wanted to buy them. I said, they're not for sale. This is strictly a documentation of history. These 440 portraits have to be documents of history. Because what we went through in a worldwide pandemic needs to be taken note of. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
But now, Rebecca, we were talking about previously about 5-year plans and the future, but what do you see yourself doing in the future? What is the wish for you still?
That is a very good question, which I'm asking myself every day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I am. I don't know. I mean, definitely keeping my creative energies to good projects and like to do more collaborations. I'd like to collaborate with interesting people and companies. I always think collaborations are very interesting. You know, I think it helps both parties grow if it's the right energy, you know. I don't even know where I'll live in the future. I mean, will I stay in New York? Will I come back to Europe? Will I go somewhere else? These are all questions I ask myself, but since I don't have the answers, I don't know. You know, I have one son in Europe, one son here. So, you know, my kids are my everything. And I have wonderful friends. I'm very blessed with a wonderful tribe of friends. A lot here in New York, but also around the world. So I think that for me, my greatest desire is that I can do whatever I do anywhere in the world. And that to me would be the greatest liberty and dream, you know, that, yeah, so I'm not really, I think I just would like to keep using creativity to do good things with. I mean, this is my dream. And, you know, every day is a new day and you can see life in a very different way. So I like to keep my mind open. And sometimes when you don't have the answer, it's okay also.
I think so too. And I think sometimes it's just life takes you sometimes on a route where you didn't expect, but that you think, okay, so I'm glad I'm here, or you know, I couldn't have dreamt being here, and then you're there and you create and you do things, and I totally agree with you. Yeah. So, but Rebecca, it was so great to talk to you. You're such a great inspiration, and you know, your art, I saw you on Instagram, and so beautiful. I absolutely love your paintings.
Thank you, Petra. I take my hat off to you and your vision and your desire to share stories together.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I hope to meet you one day in person when you come to Vienna.
That would be nice. That would be lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Petra.
And have a lovely afternoon in New York.
Thank you, and same to you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay.
Ciao.
Bye,
Ciao.
Rebecca. Bye.